got cut from my own brother's wedding rehearsal dinner. Not the wedding itself, the rehearsal dinner. My brother called me 2 days before and said very calmly, like he was canceling a lunch reservation, that he and his fiancée had decided to keep the rehearsal dinner intimate. Just immediate family and her side. I said, I am immediate family. He said, you know what I mean. I didn't, actually. But I said okay, because that's what I always did with my brother. I said, okay, I hung up, and then I sat on my kitchen floor and cried for about 20 minutes. My husband found me there. He'd just come home from work, still in his jacket, and he just sat down on the floor next to me without saying anything. Just sat there. That's the kind of man he is. His name is... Actually, it doesn't matter what his name is. What matters is that he sat on that floor with me. And when I finally told him what happened, he didn't say, that's not a big deal, or just let it go. He said, that's cruel. That was a cruel thing for your brother to do to you. Nobody had ever called it that before, cruel. But that's exactly what it was. Let me back up, because you need to understand the full picture. My brother is 4 years older than me. Growing up, he was the golden child. Not because our parents were bad people, but because he was the first, and the first always gets a version of the parents that the second child never sees. The patient version. The one that has time. By the time I came along, my parents were tired, working more distracted. My brother got soccer games and science fair projects and a whole bedroom worth of trophies. I got hand-me-down notebooks and just figure it out. I'm not bitter about it. I genuinely made peace with it years ago. But I want you to understand, this pattern of him being centered, his life being the priority, his decisions being the ones that shaped our family calendar, that wasn't new. That had been true my entire life. When he got into his college of choice, my parents threw a party. When I got into mine, a better school actually, on a partial scholarship, my mom said, that's wonderful, honey, and went back to helping my brother pack. I learned to expect less. I learned to need less from them. It was survival, honestly. So when my brother started dating her, let's call her his fiancée because that's what she was, I tried. I really tried. I bought her coffee. I remembered her preferences. I texted her on her birthday before my brother probably did. I wanted her to like me. I wanted to matter to this new version of our family she was helping to build. She tolerated me. That's the most honest word. She tolerated me the way you tolerate a distant relative at Thanksgiving. Politely, briefly, with a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. My brother never noticed. Or if he did, he decided it wasn't his problem to address. The engagement announcement came on Christmas. Everyone cried. I cried too. Genuinely, because I love my brother even when he makes it hard. I hugged him. I told him I was happy for him. I meant it. Then came the planning. I was asked to be a bridesmaid, not the maid of honor. That went to her college roommate, which was completely fair, but a bridesmaid. I said yes immediately. I drove 2 hours to her family's town for the dress fitting. I attended 3 engagement parties. I helped a dress save the dates by hand because she wanted that personal touch, and my handwriting is better than everyone else's in the family. I showed up. That's what I do. I show up. The problems started small. I wasn't included in a group text that the other bridesmaids were using to coordinate. When I mentioned it, she said she'd add me, and then didn't. The bachelorette party plans shifted. Twice. And both times I found out from my mother instead of from her or my brother. Small things, individually dismissible. Together, a pattern. 2 months before the wedding, she told me, through my brother, that she was restructuring the bridesmaid lineup. 2 people were being removed to make it more streamlined. I was one of them. My brother relayed this with the energy of someone reading a weather report. He said it wasn't personal. He said she just wanted the aesthetic to feel cohesive. I asked him what that meant, and he said the dresses weren't going to work with my coloring. I'm a brunette. 2 of the remaining bridesmaids are also brunettes. I didn't argue. I said okay. I hung up. I cried again, this time in my car, in a parking garage for a full 30 minutes. When I got home, my husband already knew something was wrong. I told him. He was quiet for a long moment, and then he said, "You've been giving them chances to treat you well. They keep choosing not to." He wasn't angry. He was just clear the way he always is when I need clarity most. I called my mother. I thought she'd be outraged. She said, "Well, you know how she is about her vision for the day. Try not to take it personally." I asked her if she had anything else to say. She said, "We just want the day to go smoothly." That was the moment something shifted in me. Not broke, shifted. Like a door that had been stuck for years finally deciding to swing the other way. And then came the rehearsal dinner call. 2 days before, that calm voice. Intimate. You know what I mean. I did know what he meant. He meant I wasn't wanted there. He'd been meaning it for months, and this was finally him just saying it out loud. I told my husband that night. He listened to everything without interrupting, which he's very good at. When I was done, he was quiet for a second, and then he said, "What do you want to do?" Not, "What should we do?" Not, "What are they going to think?" "What do you want to do?" I thought about it. I thought about showing up anyway. I thought about calling my mother and making her pick a side for once. I thought about sending my brother a very long, very honest email. I thought about all the options that involved me staying in this city, in this situation, circling this wound. And then I said, "I want to go somewhere. I don't want to be here this weekend." My husband said, "Okay, where?" We booked a cabin in the Smoky Mountains the next morning, 4 nights. A place with a porch and a hot tub and no cell signal worth mentioning. It was the week of my brother's rehearsal dinner and his wedding, and I was going to be sitting in the mountains watching fog roll through the trees. And for the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't sadness. I felt like I was choosing myself. We packed that afternoon. The drive was quiet in the best way. My husband made a playlist. I had my feet on the dashboard, which he normally hates, but didn't say anything about. We stopped at a gas station in the middle of nowhere and got bad coffee and good chips and ate them in the parking lot, laughing about nothing. It was the first time I'd laughed in weeks. The cabin was everything the photos promised. Wooden floors, a stone fireplace, windows that looked out into the trees. We got there in the evening and sat on the porch until it was fully dark, not talking about the wedding, not talking about my brother, not talking about any of it. Just existing somewhere quiet. The next morning, the morning of the rehearsal dinner, I went for a walk in the woods while my husband made breakfast. I had my phone with me, but I turned the notifications off. I walked until my legs were tired, and I sat on a rock by a creek, and I thought about all the times I'd made myself smaller to fit into spaces that were never really made for me. I don't know when I started crying, but by the time I stopped, something felt different. Not fixed, not resolved. Just released. Like I'd been carrying something for a very long time and had finally set it down. Not because someone helped me, but because I chose to. I walked back to the cabin and ate my husband's eggs and told him I was okay, actually. He looked at me like he believed me. That helped. The first text came that evening. It was from my cousin, who'd been invited to the rehearsal dinner. She said, "Is everything okay with your brother? Something weird happened." I almost didn't respond. But I typed back, "What do you mean?" She called me instead of texting. She said that during the rehearsal dinner, my brother's future father-in-law had stood up to give a toast, and in the middle of it had said something, casually, like it was an aside, about the catering company they'd hired for the reception. He'd mentioned the owner by name. That owner was my brother's business partner. The same business partner my brother had been in a legal dispute with for the past 14 months, a dispute that had been sealed under an NDA that, apparently, was about to become very unsealed, because 3 days prior, the business partner had filed a civil complaint against my brother for breach of contract and misappropriation of company funds. My cousin didn't know all the details, but she knew enough. She said the table had gone very quiet, and my brother's fiancé had looked at my brother the way you look at someone when you're realizing you don't actually know them. I sat with that for a moment. Then I said, I didn't know any of that. My cousin said, I know. That's why I'm calling you. I thanked her, hung up, and went to find my husband. He was on the porch. I sat next to him and told him what she'd said. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You didn't need to be there for any of that. He meant it as relief. I felt it that way too. The text started coming the next morning. First from my mother. Have you talked to your brother? He's going through something. Then from my aunt. Call your mother when you can. Then from a number I didn't recognize, which turned out to be my future sister-in-law's mother. Somehow, I'm so sorry for what your family is going through. I want you to know we bear no ill will toward you personally. I read that one 3 times. I didn't respond to any of them. Not immediately. My husband and I had planned a hike, and I was not going to let any of this take the hike for me. We put our phones in the car and walked for 4 hours and ate sandwiches at the top of a ridge with a view that made everything feel very small and very manageable. When we got back to the car, there were 11 more messages. The wedding was postponed. That's what I gathered from piecing them together. Not canceled. Postponed. My brother had apparently had a conversation with his fiancée the night before that went very long and very badly. And they'd decided together, or she'd decided and he'd agreed, that they needed time to sort through what had come to light before they stood in front of everyone and made promises. My mother's message at noon said, He's asking if you can come home early. My mother's message at 2 said, He really needs his family right now. My mother's message at 3 said, I know things have been difficult between you two, but this is a hard time. I showed my husband the messages. He read them and handed my phone back and said, What do you want to do? I thought about it genuinely. I thought about my brother sitting in his apartment, the wedding on hold, his business situation unraveling, probably feeling very alone. I thought about the rehearsal dinner call, the bridesmaid dress, the group text I was never added to, the years of showing up and being deprioritized. I thought about my mother saying, Try not to take it personally. I typed back to my mother, I'm glad he has you and Dad there with him. We're out of town and we're going to finish our trip. I hope he's okay. I put my phone face down on the seat. My husband reached over and squeezed my hand once. That was all. We stayed all 4 nights. The last morning, we sat on the porch with coffee and watched a deer walk through the clearing about 30 feet from the cabin. It just stood there for a while, completely unbothered, and then walked back into the trees. I don't know why that felt significant. It just did. On the drive home, I thought about what I was going to say when I saw my brother. I thought about whether I was going to say anything. I thought about the version of me who would have rushed home to help, who would have absorbed his crisis and made it her own, who would have set aside everything she was feeling to be useful. That version of me had been around a long time. She was very good at showing up. She just wasn't very good at asking whether she was being shown up for in return. My brother called me about a week after we got back. He didn't apologize for the rehearsal dinner. He didn't bring up the bridesmaid situation. He launched almost immediately into everything that was happening with his business partner, the legal situation, the stress of it all. He talked for about 15 minutes. I let him. When he stopped, I said, I'm sorry you're dealing with all of this. He said, Yeah, it's a lot. I said, I need to tell you something though. He said, What? I said, The way you handled things with me over the past few months, the bridesmaid situation, the rehearsal dinner, that hurt me a lot. And I don't think you've thought about that at all. Because you called me this week to talk about your problems, not to ask about mine. Silence. Then he said, I didn't think you were that upset about it. I said, I know you didn't. That's also part of the problem. More silence. He said, I was just doing what she wanted. I said, I understand that, and you still did it. You could have pushed back. You chose not to. That's on you, not her. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he said, I don't know what you want me to say. I said, I don't need you to say anything right now. I just needed you to know. I've thought a lot about that phone call for my brother, the one where he finally reached out. not to apologize, but to talk about himself, and honestly, I'm not even angry about it anymore. That's just who he's been his whole life. And for a long time, I kept hoping that if I showed up enough, helped enough, stayed quiet enough, he'd eventually notice and start showing up for me too. He didn't. And I think part of me knew that for years before I was willing to admit it. What I learned, and I mean really learned, not just the kind of thing you say because it sounds good, is that dignity isn't something other people give you. My brother didn't give me permission to feel hurt. My mother didn't give me permission to walk away. I had to decide that my own feelings were worth taking seriously, even when every person around me was telling me to just let it go, to be the bigger person, to keep the peace. I was so tired of keeping the peace. It had cost me so much. When my husband and I drove up into those mountains, I didn't have a plan. I wasn't executing some kind of strategy. I was just exhausted, and I needed to stop being in the middle of something that was tearing me apart. But something happened on that trip. Something I didn't expect. I remembered what it felt like to just exist without bracing for the next thing. To sit with a person who actually liked having me around. To eat bad chips in a gas station parking lot and laugh. I hadn't laughed in weeks. The business partner lawsuit, the wedding postponement, the flood of texts, none of that was something I arranged. None of it was revenge. It was just what happened when someone builds their life on things that aren't solid. My brother had been cutting corners in ways I didn't even fully know about, and those choices had been accumulating quietly, the way they always do. I wasn't standing there to say I told you so. I was standing on a ridge eating a sandwich and watching fog move through the trees. That's the thing about acting with integrity over a long period of time. It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels like small decisions. It feels like choosing to go for a walk instead of refreshing your messages. It feels like telling the truth to someone who didn't ask to hear it. It feels like getting back in the car and driving home when your trip is over, even though part of you would rather just stay in the mountains. I'm not perfectly healed from any of this. My relationship with my brother is complicated and probably always will be. My mother still doesn't fully understand why I didn't come home early. But I'm okay with being misunderstood because I finally understand myself. I know what I will accept and what I won't. I know what kind of person I want to be, and it's not the person who shrinks into corners to make other people comfortable. That week in the Smoky Mountains didn't fix my family. But it reminded me that I have a life worth protecting. And sometimes that's exactly enough to start with.